Okay, it's coming. All right, guys, welcome. Three guys, many games. We were off a week there. I know everybody out there was all nervous, but we were just collecting our thoughts because we got a very, very special guest for you today. We have our coach Gerry Byrne from Harvard men's lacrosse team. We're excited. Jerry's a longtime friend. Was a fantastic player that we were able to play with for many years and competed against. As a coach, he's a longtime coach, has probably 30 years coaching experience at various levels, and we're really excited to get to talk to him about what's up and coming at Harvard, as well as discuss all of the past days of his coaching and playing experience. So welcome, Gerry Byrne.
Oh.
Again, I'm your host, Steve Sombrato. I'm here with the GOAT, Vinny Sombrato, and Levittown's own Rob Smalley. How we doing today, Smalls? We're excited. We got a guest from Levittown. What do you think about this? This might be our first Levittown guest ever.
No, couldn't have a better dude. I'll tell you, he came from a great family, his brothers, and just everything he has done has been gold. I wish that was for me. But no, he's done it right. He's done it right. How many years you there now coaching over at Harvard?
No, 5 years, but only 3 seasons with all the COVID and everything.
Oh, 3 years. Well, okay, yeah.
I was excited, because, obviously, Gerry, our paths are sort of similar paths in a way. I know you're a little older than I, but, from Long Island, growing up, you had a sibling that was on a world team. My sibling was on a world team as well, as we're making our way through high school, college, and through all of those connections in the game. That that's the amazing thing about lacrosse. The people that from junior high school and high school are still the people you're talking, playing with, coaching against, and it just seems like as big as the world gets, it stays small in lacrosse.
Well, you and I are in like a really elite club of having played the game but not being as good as your older brothers.
Right. So
we have some we have counseling services available throughout the country. So we're, if you're from Levittown, Eddie Cook was a great player, maybe not as good as Kevin. Gerry Byrne, not as good as his brother Steve. Steve Sombrato, great player, not as good as Vinny. Yeah, we probably spilled some beers crying in our pretzel bowls worrying about that.
It's funny. It's an interesting topic. Let's face it, there's a lot of siblings that play. I always said, like, for me, that hurdle, I got over that hurdle probably when it sometime in like high school, maybe just getting to varsity, because I started to realize, say, none of you guys are as good as him. Why you expect me to be as good as him? I'm just trying to be as good as I can be,
Dude, Jack Moran at Chaminade thought I was adopted, because my older brother was so good. He's like, I want to see some DNA and birth certificates to see if you're related to him.
Well, don't let anybody fool the fans out there. Gerry was a tremendous player, and at many stages of his career, both college and professional, he was a dominant player. He was a game-changing player. He was a player that could, pick up a ball and then really create offense. He's one of those type of guys. So for anybody who hasn't, didn't have the opportunity to see Gerry play, this is one of these guys that, you could put the long pole on extra man and could be effective. This is that type of skilled stick work as a defenseman. And there are, it seems like that's where the game, you see a lot more of that now, but back years ago, there weren't as many handling the ball and doing some of those things as you did as a player, and just getting back to so give us a little bit about your Chaminade days. How do you think
Well,
the
let me,
days?
Stephen, let me get in here a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's go back, because we have Rob Smalley here, a fellow Levittown guy who knew the Burns family, from Levittown. So I'd like to hear from Gerry a little bit about, his background, when the decision came in, because I know Steve. Now, Gerry, you had one or two brothers.
I have two older brothers. My older brother Thomas is a
And
retired
Steve.
New York City fire captain, New York City Fire Department captain. He didn't play the game. He went to Holy Trinity High School. My middle brother Steve went to Levittown Division, and after those two educational experiences, my parents said, "Do not even think about going to either one of those schools." So my mom was doing a lot of rosaries and a lot of novenas, and somehow I got admitted to Chaminade. And I was telling Steve Sombrado last night was, kind of transformative moment in my life. It was it was a hard 4 years. I really didn't want to go. None of my friends from growing up were going. All the kids were from, Garden City and Manhasset, and I rolled in with a blue corduroy jacket and a sock tie, and that was pretty much my only jacket and tie for 4 years. But even though I went in with my dragging my feet, I came out of it, I think, and you probably feel the same way, Vinny, as this kind of put me on a path for, of trying to achieve for the rest of my life. So yeah, no, growing up in that town, oh my goodness, you deal with Smalley every week, so you see the product of
It can't
of
be
that
like that.
experience.
Please don't tell us they're all like Smalley.
Oh
Well,
my God.
they're more like Smalley. That's for sure. I mean, think about this social experiment. Let's get a bunch of kind of Italians, Irish, Germans who are like living in closets in one of the boroughs. We got this great idea. Let's give them 900 square foot houses, no basements, and you'll all have kids at the exact same rhythm, and
Wow.
produce total hoodlums, total hoodlums. And your parents survived World War II and the Korean War. They worked with weapons and tools, all of them, and their kids were some of the funniest, meanest, most competitive people you've ever met. So it was quite a experience.
Yeah, well, what you said about Chaminade, I had the opportunity. I was not accepted originally. I was waitlisted, and I actually got a phone call in November of ninth grade to come for an interview, and then I decided to go. My dad said, you have to make a choice. If you make your choice, you got to live with it. After 1 week, I begged him to leave Chaminade. It was a lot different than what was going on in public school. No girls, the whole bit. But in the long run, once I adjusted, it was, really the best thing that ever happened to me to get through that school.
No,
Hey, let me jump in here
but
too. I'm sorry. We all have a Chaminade connection, even though I didn't go there. My dad had gone there in 1949, and he graduated top of his class along with his brother George in 1947. And also Stephen's son goes there. Now my brother's young kid is thinking about going to Chaminade, but he lives out east. So it's a long drive out there. So we all have a connection to Chaminade, which I think is very interesting.
And the people that were there, Jack Moran, who was my high school coach, is still the coach. Steve Leghart, Jack's from Levittown. Steve Leghart's from Levittown. Bob Pomponio, who's the kind of the guy behind the guy, has been coaching the JV team there for over 40 years. So no, but it does remind you, and you guys are doing this, even doing some pods like this, is that how important the connection of community and the connection of the sport and all these people who, whether you played with them or if they taught you. I think about the people who, who taught me that made it really hard to go to school there, as you know, Vin, the legendary homework commitments. And
Yeah.
so, but when I think about any sort of success that I've had in my life has been connected to the lessons I learned there, but also kind of the lessons coming from Levittown, going to a school with all the,
Yeah.
the upper crust kids was, that was formative too. So,
Gerry, but you were, in all due respect, even Vinny came from Harlem and then he moved to where we were. You guys were grinders. No one gave you anything. Your father had to work hard, whatever they did. Your brothers, you worked hard at the next step. So you, as the youngest, you knew you had to work hard, whether it was at Chaminade, Lacrosse. Nobody was giving you anything. No one gave anything to Steven. He had to go behind Vinny, and Vinny, the same thing. Same thing with me. No one gave us anything, man. And sometimes in life, to grind could be the best thing you have going for you.
it was almost as hard as climbing the 17-foot fence at Candy Egg Park after playing Summer League.
So let me ask you your path, Gerry. So now you have an older brother who is a good friend and just a great guy, your brother Steve, that I was lucky enough. I played against him many years, but I like playing with him much better when we were on the '86 World Team together up in Toronto. He's got a great sense of humor, just like you, and just a phenomenal competitor. He was really special. He went to UVA, Virginia, and hit the ground running. Was on, I guess, his freshman year. I think they played for the national championship, and he was an integral part. He was a great, he was a transitional type of long stick. He could play close D. He could play pole. He could pretty much do anything that you want from a defenseman. And I guess as you said, growing up with an older brother like that and seeing it. It's obviously, there's a little pressure, but obviously it's also an advantage because you got somebody who I'm sure taught you a lot about the game.
No doubt. He's my best friend right now. I just talked to him. He sends his best. I think he has some, rough memories of the Long Island Lacrosse Club, North Hempstead battles, but he sends his best to all three of you guys. And no, he started very late too. And so he brought a kind of a creativity and an instinct to that position. He was arguably the first, great takeaway defenseman. Well, Mark Greenberg obviously was very good, but Steven was different. He was left-handed. He could run. He would go over your head. He invented a bunch of different checks or perfected a bunch of different checks. So I grew up kind of aspiring to be like him. Even though I'm right-handed, he's left-handed. I'm 3 inches taller than him. I'm not as athletic as he was, but he was an inspiration to me, just as I'm sure you were to Steve. And then you develop your own. At some point, you stop trying to mimic him, and then you start, taking the best of what you could copy from him, but also adding your own skills. And that ultimately, which was a real motivation for me, I was also trying to create my own identity. I did, when you were younger, and Steve Sobrato can, echo this, is that when your older brother is an iconic player, you love basking in the glow of that. But at some point, you get kind of pissed about it, and you're like, F that guy. I'm going to be better than him or different than him. And so I think we all went through, and then you come back to, at some point in your life, you're like, how great was it to have an inspiration like that? So my brother was is a great friend and an inspiration to me even to this day. And we speak all the time, but he was, he did bad things to people. The first college lacrosse game I ever saw, because when I was a sophomore at Chaminade, I wasn't playing lacrosse yet. I hadn't played lacrosse, and or maybe I was a junior, and we went down to watch Maryland play Virginia, and Maryland had a great attackman. I can't remember his name, but they made him stand on the end line so that he wouldn't touch the ball.
Yeah,
because Steven was, separating him from the ball.
Yeah.
So I'm like, why is Steven not doing anything? And I'm like, well, because that guy is scared to death of him.
That's quite a compliment that an offensive play that their scheme is to take their own best guy out of it because
exactly.
the defender's so great, and he was great at creating transition. So you play at Chaminade now. What was your recruiting process like once you know you got to be? You obviously had to be a player. You ended up at Division I playing at UMass. But how'd you take that next step?
I loved school. I loved the challenge of going to that school because I don't know if you remember, but when you walk into the front door of Chaminade, right over the gym doors was
The honor roll.
anybody who was on the honor roll.
Right.
And, in today's day and age, they don't promote that because they don't want people to feel bad. But that was the first thing you saw when you walked in. It was little plastic white letters against a black background in a case that was locked. And you were ranked by your grades, not alphabetical, by your grades. So you constantly knew who was ahead of you and who was trying to catch up to you. So I was really focused on that competitive part of how I looked at kind of achievement. And I just started playing because my mother made fun of me. I was doing my summer reading at Chaminade. We had to read The Hobbit or something one summer. And my mom comes in like smoking a cigarette and being like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm doing my summer reading." She's like, "You got to get outside. You got to, I had grown like 6 inches and 7 inches in 1 year. I played basketball my freshman year at Chaminade. And then I never made another team till I made the lacrosse team as a junior in the spring. And so I wasn't recruited, and I went to UMass because Jack Moran had gone there, and there was a bunch of Long Island guys on that team, and I got a lot of academic aid to go there, and my parents could afford it. There wasn't what happens now where they have you hire a consultant to do all your school research and everything. I basically I think I applied to like BC, Siena, a bunch of Catholic schools, and UMass where Jack had gone, and so I didn't even bring my equipment up. I walked on my freshman year.
Wow. Was Garber still the coach when you were?
Yes. Yeah. Dick Garber was the head coach when I got there. Yep.
Yeah, he was some gentleman. Very nice man.
He was.
Well,
he was. So,
at UMass.
So I was a late starter. But also a late starter to kind of figuring out how your body works, and which doesn't happen a lot in recruiting now. We have to make these decisions, trying to project what 16-year-old's going to be really good at 21. There's no art to it. Anybody who tells you like, "Oh, that guy's really good at recruiting," it's a little bit of art, a little bit of science, a lot of luck, and trying to predict, who's going to be really good. So yeah, nobody. And listen, my brother Steven ended up in Virginia because Tom Flatley basically called Jim Adams and said, "Hey, there's this guy at this public school in Long Island. You should take. He was going to probably go to W&L or Navy but that's how recruiting happened then. You had the Tom Flatleys of the world would make a call to somebody, and Jim Adams never saw Steve Byrne play, in person. So I just showed up, which wasn't that radical, and I watched them practice for a couple of days, and then I tried out.
Wow.
The teams at UMass you had, I know that one team I particularly remember, the one very, very good team that I think you were on, that team that I think they lost in the quarters to Hopkins.
Yes.
And a very, very tight game, right? It wasn't overtime?
We lost by a couple of goals. I remember that game. It was 1,000 degrees out, and we had all decided we were going to retire our own jerseys. So we had these remember the big mesh, this thing was like 300% cotton. So we made them half shirts. We cut the half shirts, and then we all decided to wear red Chuck Taylors, which turned out to be a bad move. Like you can't, your feet were on fire because of anybody who wears the old school Chuck Taylors, your foot just slides on the bottom. It was like a griddle, and so we had a good game. We had Tommy Carmine was on that team, and Kelly Carr. And Tom Aldrich, who was an All-American, I played defense with Sal Lacasio.
Sal was in the goal, right?
Yeah. Sally Potatoes was in the goal. And as I like to tell the story of Sal, I was part of the defense that allowed you to break the NCAA record for the most saves.
Right. That was that game, right?
That
That was that game that when
Yeah.
he broke the record, right?
Sal had like 29 or 30
Yeah.
saves. So I'm like, Sal, if I wasn't so mediocre, you wouldn't have been able to break the NCAA record. So
That's
we,
fun.
we gave him a game, but they had Brian Wood and Bouvier. And
Well, I remember listening to that game on the radio, believe it or not. It was on some obscure
What
radio
year was
station.
that? What are we talking? What game for the viewers, guys?
1986.
So
1986.
1986. You guys,
Now,
okay.
and you're talking at a time, Smalls, when not a lot of teams are breaking through the Hopkins, Virginia, Syracuse. They're not really breaking through that layer of Carolina at the top.
Right.
And you're in a quarterfinal game, and here it is. I'm listening to this game, and I'm like, UMass has got Hopkins on the ropes. They are really like in trouble, and
That's great.
it they escaped, by the skin of their teeth, Hopkins, and I think that year they went on. They might have lost in the semi that year. I think they lost in the semi to Carolina. I think Carolina won that year, '86. But what?
Like I hadn't learned to like work yet, like in the same way that I worked at other things. And so after college, much like you, Steve, is I wanted to create my own identity within the game as a player. And it took me, took a long time to do that. I think part of it was my brother stopped playing as much as I was playing. And I was like, object in the mirror appears closer than it is. No, I was really close. So I was just constantly like trying to hunt him down, playing in all the tournaments and things that we would play in, that we would play in together. And then, Vinny and I and Steve Sobrato all played in the MILL together.
Well, that was like really that next juncture was when and again, you're a little ahead of me, so it's like you kind of have those years where you must be really doing the journey on the tournaments and things, because I think your first year playing indoor was my first year playing indoor with the Saints.
Yes.
And,
Hey, Gerry, I got a question. I didn't mean to jump in. Can I jump in, Stephen?
Go
Excuse
ahead.
me. As you were growing as an athlete, trying to get to your brother's level, obviously in lacrosse you never reached that, but athletically, did you feel that you got up to Stephen's athletic ability maybe at one time? I'm not talking about as good as him in lacrosse, but just as an athlete growing as you matured, because you're actually a late bloomer like Vinny and Stephen.
Well, listen, I think it all, I don't know about that, but I think it all goes back to Azalea basketball courts.
Yeah.
In Levittown. I told this to Steve Sombrato last night. Schmally didn't wear a shirt for like 9 straight years.
Couldn't afford it.
In the mid 70s to the early 80s.
Right.
I'm telling you, Matthew McConaughey's worn more shirts than Smalley. Smalley never had a shirt on. It was like he had a pull-up bar in every corner in Levittown, and he would show up at the basketball court, low top Chuck Taylors, maybe Pro Keds, I don't know.
Yeah, 100% right.
Some really tight jeans and no shirt at all. And, he could just jump. He could probably take a quarter off the top of a basketball court. So when Smalley showed up, you really didn't want him to shoot, but you really wanted him to rebound and play defense. So you were kind of my athletic, that's what I was trying to get to, Smalls.
What was good about that is everybody played.
Smalls, that's quite a compliment, Smalls.
Thank you. I really appreciate that's my only claim to fame, and thank you so much. But to say, to feed off what he was doing, everybody in the course back then got on the courts in Azalea. We had all these pools in Levittown. So you played basketball. You wanted to get better in lacrosse. And his brother, everybody came up. Even if you weren't great in basketball, you still came up to play basketball. And I thought that was a very interesting part, which I believe definitely helped Gerry probably make the team as a 9th grader when he went to Chaminade, probably.
No fouls. No fouls.
Oh, God.
No fouls. No fouls. And then to get in the pool, if you didn't have your pool ID, you had to bring an electric bill.
Yeah.
That's how you got in the pool.
It was free.
Wow.
If you bought a house there, you had the pools there, yeah.
Well, those early days with the Saints, you also reconnected with some Levittown guys. We had, I think, Mikey Cummings and Bobby Cummings were also on the team.
Yeah, they're
Uh,
quasi
you know who
Levittown.
else? I
Yeah,
think Bobby Cook was on the team as
Bobby
well.
Cook
You know,
and
so
no, Vinny Pfeiffer. There was, I mean, Tim McEntee, Donnie
right,
Borges,
there was some characters.
Vinny Pfeiffer, Sally Potatoes,
Yeah.
the Cummings brothers,
Seth Tierney, he's another Levittown
Seth
guy. Seth
Tierney,
was on the team,
Rob Cotignato,
right?
Gordon Purdy.
Yeah,
It's a
How
lot
about
of guys
Jeff
who became
Goldberg?
college
Can we throw
coaches.
him in there?
he wasn't on that team though. He was already, you know,
He
he
was
was
retired. He was
Goldberg
he
gone.
was
was
head
Went to
surfing
Florida.
at that point. But
Bobby Engelke.
yeah, I mean, there was quite a flavorful team of Long Island characters.
Rodney Dumpster.
I thought exactly.
Oh my God.
I thought I had seen it all, but then we had went on road trips. And I have to close my eyes, cover my ears. I know nothing.
No, nothing.
That
Sergeant
was
Schultz. I know nothing.
So Burnsy, you had a you had a great career in terms of your playing, and while at UMass, you obviously were a student. I think I saw that in your bio. You were cum laude at graduation. I think an economics degree or something. Am I right?
Yes.
So you from there, how did you transition into the coaching ranks? You know, how did that did you work at a job coming out of UMass?
Yeah, I worked in the city. I worked on Wall Street, and I actually was going to go to play lacrosse in England after working in Manhattan for 2 years. My brother Steve had met someone at the '86 World Games who ran the English Lacrosse Association, so I was planning to go there. And then Kevin Corrigan, who was my brother's roommate at Virginia, had just become the head coach at Notre Dame. This is 1980. Like, this is fall or summer of 1988.
Mm-hmm.
And so he needed somebody. I don't know if I had ever even met Kevin before. I flew out, did an interview, and got admitted to the business school at Notre Dame. So I started coaching there in the spring of 1989. Got my master's degree in business and coached at the same time, and then went back to work. So I didn't coach. I worked, and then I got let go from a really good corporate job, and I didn't have to work for a year. So I was part of my contract.
Mm-hmm.
And so my wife and I adopted 2 kids. I volunteered to coach at the high school team where we lived in New Hampshire. And then I just kind of went from there and found my way back to college coaching that way.
Wow.
Awesome, man.
Never worked again.
Wow, that's really, that's really a path. Yeah, that's why I love these stories about guys. You know, people don't know the backstory. That's why we enjoy these podcasts, because we get to hear it right from the person. And, you've been around the game so long and at the highest level with an amazing reputation, especially, you were considered a defensive genius in terms of schemes, and you've produced amazing defensive players, and the record speaks for itself, the goals against averages and things like that. But it's funny how, things in life, you go one way, next thing you know, a whole different path. It's amazing.
I remember when I'd been in kind of sporting goods management for a long time, and I was working for a company called Cybex. You've probably worked out on your thing. So I was the CMO of that company. It wasn't a huge company, but it was a good company. But I got let go from it, and I remember just being crushed. And I remember I was interviewing at Timberland, the footwear, and
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to get the same position there. It was a New Hampshire-based company, and I ended up not getting offered that position. And I was like, what the hell am I going to do? But I didn't have to work because part of my exit package was that they were going to pay me for a year. And so I just started volunteering to coaching, and then I never went back. I coached in high school. I coached at Division II at St. Anselm College in New Hampshire. And then I coached at Notre Dame again. and then came to Harvard. So you're right. Like we all have these pivotal moments in our lives that seem to be crippling, and then who knows what door that's going to open.
Yeah, one
And
door
Gerry, how
closes,
long were
one
you at
door.
Notre Dame? How
The
long were you at
second
Notre
time,
Dame?
the second time I was there for 14 years.
Holy
So
cannoli.
17 total years, 2 different stints.
So during that time, obviously you were doing some great things with the defenses, and they were always known for that type of play. Clearly there had been a lot of different jobs opening up during those times. Like, what was it at that time that you probably could have taken some job at some point? Did you feel like you really wanted to really, accomplish more at Notre Dame, or you just felt that comfortable there that didn't make you make a move sooner to be a head coach?
Yeah, I know. What the original reason going back was my wife and I had met there. My wife played softball at Notre Dame, and we had met there. And we were just like, we had 3 young kids at the time, and I was coaching at a Division II school, St. Anselm College in Manchester, New Hampshire, and just we had met there, we had fallen in love there. Why not go back? And we love the place. It's a great place. And so I convinced her that let's do it. We had a beautiful house in New Hampshire, 1770, like dream house that we had renovated and moved to South Bend. And so that was the real reason. The real reason was kind of to, Kevin and I were very close. Kevin Corrigan and I were close, and we had this great memories and connection to that place. And so we were like the Beverly Hillbillies. We moved out to drag my kids out to South Bend, and 2 of my 3 kids ended up being lacrosse players at Notre Dame and graduated from Notre Dame. And like once they had kind of made their way through, I had some opportunities to look at some other jobs, but your family commitment to your family was more important. And so when my kids finally graduated and this opportunity came up, my kids were all gone. We were empty nesters, and I convinced my wife to take a little bit of an adventure. And my wife's a doctor, and she works at Harvard Medical School, and she works at Beth Israel, which is one of Harvard's hospitals here near campus. And so it was just like we were both in our 50s, and why not try something different?
Yeah.
So, this is like the 5th thing I've done in my life. I tell my players all the time that all want to be, titans on Wall Street. I'm like, this is the 5th thing that I've done. Who knows what the 6th thing might be?
Right. That's amazing. And it's amazing how the other things happen to always fill in, like whether it's your spouse has some connection where you're going, and now, that sort of land on your feet of doing different things in that community and building that up. I mean, it's
Gerry, do you have a charity you're involved with at all? I'm sorry, Stephen. I thought you were done.
We yes, we work with I'm on the board of Harlem Lacrosse here in Boston. So we do a lot of stuff with Harlem, which is an amazing organization. And we also work with a different Boston-based organization called Team Impact. I don't know if you guys have heard of this. They match college sports teams with kids who have physical disabilities.
I've heard of that.
And you do a signing event.
Yeah.
It's a huge thing. It's based in Quincy, Massachusetts, here right outside of Boston. So that's our 2 main things, Harlem and Team Impact.
Wow, it's nice that you give back. It's good to give back. Awesome.
No doubt. Where would we be without all those adults who didn't give up on us, right? I mean,
you got that right.
I'm sure the Sobrados could have hung in Levittown pretty easily if they got.
That's great.
I spent a few nights in Levittown.
You would have fit right in.
They're great.
I spent a few nights at my college teammate Jim O'Connor's.
Oh my Jesus!
A couple times.
Who didn't he become a policeman?
He did, a very high ranking.
It's amazing how the people who broke the law a lot became law enforcement.
I just remember, it's funny because he was always with Steve Leghart and
Yeah.
Jim O'Connor and Jim Daly, which was another Levittown guy. I mean, these guys, they were characters. They were the
You
best.
know,
They were
but
fun to be around. I could tell you that. I always
I'm
had a
telling
lot
you,
of
like
fun with
my
those guys.
father was a New York City policeman before he became a fireman for 30 something years. Like firemen and cops kids were, we were always, we were right up against the law, right? We strayed, like
You got
it's
that right.
amazing, But yeah, Jim O'Connor, that's a blast from the past.
That
Yeah.
is. And so now you make it to Harvard. Now it's you head over to Harvard, and it's like Smalley would say, "You made it."
Oh, the
You
kid made
made
it.
it.
When I heard Harvard, I had to fact check that. At the first time, I didn't believe Vinny Sobrano. I love Vinny. But I got only 2 knocks on Vinny. I'm not going to do it here today because it's a good interview. But he's dead on. He's a fact checker every night. He fact checks every. That's why I really believe someday, and you're going to laugh, Gerry. I believe I could be a coach one day, and one day you're going to turn around and go, "How the fuck did Smalley get that job coaching?" Listening to the dude, Gerry, the guy remembers everything from 30 years ago. I mean, every little check, every little game,
That's the Chaminade. Like we had to
That's
memorize
it. That's
the
it.
stuff. I still can memorize. I still remember we had to memorize the soliloquy, Hamlet's soliloquy from Macbeth. To be or not to be.
Right.
I can't do the whole thing, but I can do about 3/4 of it.
Oh, it's a shot like my dad. That's why kind of the connection with Vinny. When I reconnected with Vinny and I lost my dad like 6 years ago, and then I said to Vinny, "Come back to the school. I want to see my dad on the wall." It was something, and we went back there, right, Vinny? Finish up what we did when we went back there. Who did we go with?
Gerry knows, like you said about the honor roll thing on the walls of the hall. There's also every graduating class from the inception of Chaminade. So I told Smalls that, and he was like, "Really? My father goes back to the 40s." I said, "It's up there. Trust me." So one day we went over, we watched a lacrosse game, and then a friend of ours, Dennis Blygen, who works at the school, friend of both Smalls and myself, he took us into the school. I showed him shortcuts. He's working there. He said, "You know the school better than me." And when we got, I said, "I know right where your father's pictures are, based on the years." And we found not only his father and his uncle, right, Smalls? We saw your
Gerry,
father.
I couldn't
uncle
believe
up
it,
on the
man.
wall.
It was.
Their
What it
class
was?
about,
Yeah.
I don't know, it looked like there was about 30 people in his whole class.
There was actually 48 people that graduated the year
48.
1949.
Right.
But my dad, after losing your father, like your father, he meant so much to our family and our life, and to grow, and all the kids. And we didn't have much, Gerry. You know that. My dad had gotten sick. He was getting a big job, but he got sick and couldn't handle a big job. We wound up growing up in Levittown like yourself. But we made mistakes, my older brother and I. But we were all smart. We were very, very smart. So I got fortunate later on in business to be able to excel and grow, and all due to my father and my mother just believing in us. When we had nothing, and I got in trouble in those days, and they never stopped believing in their kids, and I'm very fortunate. That's why I like to give back to a lot of things. As Vinny knows, I do a lot of things for kids and stuff, and get sweets and invite people back in the scenes that, never would have different opportunities to hang around with us, and just great. The whole Chaminade, it's a Chaminade thing, and that's why it's an unbelievable school. If you can get a chance to go there, you never look back on it in life. The memories are just phenomenal, like that. So
who had blacker hair, Elvis or Vinny in his graduation?
That's a toss up. Oh, that's a toss up, man.
Great top 5 hair at Chaminade.
Vinny always was. He was another guy always going the other direction. Like you're talking about the 70s. You're talking about counterculture. Where even at Chaminade, even though they got kids are wearing their hair a little longer.
Yeah.
So what does Vinny do? He goes and gets his hair cut. He basically almost gets a skinhead, and he's almost getting in trouble for that. Like they're like, he went the opposite way.
They thought I was being a wise guy, cut my hair too short. Well, the story behind that was really my father. I wanted a bicycle, and he said, "If you go get a crew cut, I'll get you a bicycle." I said, "Crew cut?" And I went to the barber, and the guy said, he boycotted me. He said, "I'm not giving you a crew cut. Your parents are going to come here. They're going to want to kill me." I said, "No, my father said it's okay." He said, "You got to bring your father here to tell me." So I had to tell my father, "You got to come to the barber to tell it's okay." And then I go to school on Monday, and they say, "What are you being a wise guy? You shaved your head?" And they gave me. I think I got a green slip, and I got it. You
Yeah.
got the merits out of that one.
All right, I got some questions. Can we change course a little bit
No,
and
I
just
just want to. I want to talk
go ahead.
about. I want to talk a little bit about Harvard. Now,
That's what I want to do. I want to get to Harvard
You know,
and get into some
this year at
questions.
Harvard, I thought was it was a successful season. You started out very good. There was some tight games, but you moved through the schedule pretty nicely. And then obviously, look, I looked at that schedule. There are not many easy games on that schedule at all, and especially as you got into the later part of that year, you're playing almost a top 10 team every single week the last 5-6 weeks of the season, which is and many of those games were competitive, including that game you had at home against Virginia. I watched that game, and it was a game that certainly you had chances to maybe take that game down. A couple of things here and there. Again, Virginia's a very strong team, but and sometimes you need everything to go right. But it's certainly not like a game that you would say was not winnable. You were definitely in many
Yeah.
of those tough games. And the
No,
ice is
listen,
always tough.
you guys have been playing long enough that, I think with the exception of one or two games, we were winning every game in the fourth quarter. And so you don't get any gold stars for that. What that means is, you're not good enough yet.
Right.
And part of winning those games is attitudinal and cultural, and others is you need a play to bounce your way, and you need to finish some plays. Like you think about all the games that we've played in together, where somebody takes a shot to go up two with a minute left, it hits a crossbar, rebounds, goes the other end, and it's tied up. So plays like that goes another way. It's a different outcome. So we need to get better. We're still developing our depth. This September coming up will be the first year where everyone on the team is guys that I recruited. And so that's a shift, because everybody has received the same message, the same outlook, the same perspective, the same hope, they came for all the consistent reasons. And so one is getting better in the fourth quarter, and that's depth, and that's coaching. That's me doing it better face-offs, better goaltending, all of that stuff that allows you to win those games. And also just building up an identity that you feel confident that you're going to win those games. So that's one part of it. But yeah, no, the experience here, that game against Virginia, we had 4,000 plus people at that game. It was the first sellout in Harvard Lacrosse history. And so people were hanging off the rafters. And so
Right.
we've developed a great relationship with the lacrosse community here in Boston. So, people come out to our games. It's a great environment for recruits to see. We're in the process of just about to announce a pretty significant, renovation of our stadium, so that's going to be super exciting to play. So this is an iconic place. This is a dream for people all around the world to come to school here and learn. And what I'm trying to do is the way people think about Harvard as an educational experience, I want them to think about Harvard from an athletic and lacrosse experience. So, we took our team to Spain this summer. We travel all over the country. We play anybody, anywhere. We play Michigan in Ann Arbor. We're playing Notre Dame in Chicago this fall. We've played Ohio State in Florida. We played the Dutch national team in Barcelona. Like, we'll play anybody, anywhere. And you're going to get the job of your dreams. You're going to have this unbelievable athletic experience. You're going to travel and see the world and the country. And I don't think there's a more compelling academic athletic experience in Division I lacrosse, period.
Yeah, it's hard to beat. The only disadvantage I see for you in terms of personnel is that, and not only you, but I think the other Ivies, you're not getting those 5-year guys. Your guys are, maybe didn't play a year, got injured or whatever, and they're adding value to the other teams that they're going to.
Yeah.
You saw a bunch of these Princeton guys, and I know you got a couple now going other places. The Ivy Leagues is, top players that got an extra year. They got that 5th year. They're supplementing these other rosters, and it's it's an advantage when you got a guy who's 24, maybe 25 in some cases, playing against guys coming out of high school.
No, listen, I think the flip of that argument is also true, Vinny, which means if you're a parent or a kid who's really paying attention, well, with the exception of a couple teams in our league, it's nearly impossible to transfer to Harvard and Yale and Princeton as an example. And so kids and parents who are paying attention, they know that who they come in with is probably who they're going to graduate with.
Right.
And yes, that hurts us a little bit, but it also attracts a certain kind of kid who I don't mind competing, but I don't want to compete with transfers and portal disgruntlements that way. So and I know the roster is going to be 45 people,
right.
or 4, so that attracts a certain kind of kid who sees, I want to play great championship level lacrosse. I want to get an elite education. I want to start my career exactly where I want to start. Listen, going to Harvard is almost like starting on third base. Doesn't mean you're going to get a home run, but you're already 3/4 of the way there. So we're looking for kids like, I want to play at the highest level. I want to get an incomparable education, and I want to get myself started in my life in a time and in a world where, guarantees are hard to come by. Like, it's nice to be able to have the kind of life that you want. And our league can deliver that, and Harvard in particular can prepare you for that. And again, do we want to compete in Final Fours? Absolutely. Do we want to win our league? Absolutely. We're pursuing that in an unrelenting manner, while at the same time, I expect my guys to crush school and be great citizens and be future great husbands and continue to be great siblings. That's a lot to ask of guys. People think they want that, but not everyone wants that.
We spoke about it a little bit last night, Gerry, and Smalls will appreciate hearing some of these figures. I think you said 3 or 4 years in a row had the highest GPAs of any teams, Division 1, 2, 3, Harvard.
So yeah, the USILA gives out an award. They started giving it out 3 years ago to the team with the highest GPA in all of college lacrosse, and we've won it all 3 times.
That's
at this place.
And then
at this place.
And then think about this, Smalls. A lot of people can't get into Harvard. A lot of people apply to Harvard. The level of the people getting rejected to go to Harvard. How many valedictorians? Perfect SAT.
30,000 valedictorians.
Can I push back a little bit on what you guys are saying? And I know Vinny might gang up on me. Just a little pushback here. I get it, and I understand all what you're saying, but it sounds like a bunch of rich kids are going there, getting into the school, and you got to be that. What about the kid that is coming up and doesn't come from a family that has much? How does he get into Harvard? I mean, he can't get there.
But that's a mythology. That's an old logic. We got cops and firemen's kids on our team, as well as having.
Okay, so then you have grown in that area where you have people like that.
Probably 30 years. We have a kid coming from, we got kids coming from public schools, and the people who have, who come from, elite high schools and have tutors and have private, physical coaches and private SAT testing. Yeah, do those people have an advantage? But Harvard about 34 years ago stopped looking at that as much. They just lost the Supreme Court case about admissions, but Harvard's going to continue to look for well-rounded kids from all over the world and all over the country. This is not homogenous. This is not all. So it's going in the right direction. This is not all North Shore or Gold Coast or whatever affluent community you want to think about. This is more than 50% of the last two freshman classes was non-white.
So Jerry, so
So
you're
this
saying,
is a diverse place.
so in other words, you're saying they don't lower the standards to come in to play a sport at Harvard. They keep their same standards like a Chaminade and everything, which I'm for. But are those the standards they always keep, or do they lower the standards when someone's coming in to play a sport because he's a good athlete? It doesn't seem like Harvard does that, where Notre Dame has done that in the past in football. I mean, they got documents of all that stuff that I read, and Notre Dame had to change.
Every school on the planet looks at, whether you're great at acting, whether you're great at playing an instrument, whether you're someone who's developed an app, whether you're someone who's good at sports. Every school is looking at the totality of what you can bring to a campus. So, most people get in purely on merit, academic merit at any school, but then there's a portion that have some sort of special skill that the school values that you can bring to campus.
I've never been to Harvard. Vinny, have you been to Harvard?
I've been on the campus, yes, a few times. I played up there.
Oh, you've been on the campus.
Yeah.
I'm 1-1 against Harvard. We lost that post. We won up at Harvard.
Gerry, how did you get the job when you went there? It's interesting because you had to be scared to death. It's Harvard. I think of Harvard when I was a kid. Like, whoever goes there and say, were you scared? Did you think you were getting the job, or what'd you think?
No, because
lucky to have them. What are you talking about?
I think that there's people don't, a lot of us maybe on the screen didn't know when we were 16 years old. We didn't know people who went to school here.
Exactly.
It was portrayed in the media as, a bunch of guys with ascots and smoking jackets and numerals after their names. And, that's a 100-year-old kind of trope, to be honest with you. It's a very friendly, super competitive driven place, which I have a lot of respect for. But, no, the process was super fun. I had an opportunity to look at this in 2010. And so I was familiar with the school, and Bob Scalise, who's from Uniondale, was the head lacrosse coach when we were in college, and he was the athletic director at the time. And so, he's from Uniondale.
Wow.
So we connected right off the bat. And so, no, this is a friendly, welcoming, really inspiring place. So,
I'd like to get down there to make a game this year, maybe. What do you think?
We
Vince?
definitely will go for the game.
Yeah.
I'd love to go to see a game up there. I definitely would echo, many of the guys. I got an opportunity, Smalls. You didn't make it this year, but I got an opportunity to play with some of the Harvard guys. I know they weren't all Harvard guys, but the team up in Lake Placid, bunch of gentlemen, just a unbelievable experience of gentlemen. This is the type of guys, you're dealing with.
You wouldn't think of that years ago when I was a kid. I used to think all these Harvard kids, bunch of snot-nosed kids. You know what I mean?
No,
I know it's a stereotypical what people do think out there.
Yeah,
I've heard
it's true. It's true.
I'm just saying what people think of Harvard. They think it's the biggest, snottiest. But
I'd actually go as far as to say I see the reverse. I see sometimes other people, maybe coming from more rugged backgrounds, being more standoffish to the other people. Because I've never met any of the different guys that I've always met. They've been nothing but friendly, nice, funny, charming. Just good guys to be around. They're
fortunate to realize that they got in there. It's like, what is it a privilege to go? I mean, what do you say about it? Just to be able to get it,
privilege. I think you definitely got to consider it a privilege. It's the most
just to be able to get in there. So you got to be humble. If you're not humble after going there, what's the cause? What do you think, Vinny?
Listen, I think it's a privilege to go to any university.
Yeah.
I think, but Harvard obviously is special. It has a long history. It's produced a lot of great people that have done a lot of good things for the world. I'm not just talking from a financial standpoint. I'm talking in general. You got scientists, you got all kinds of people coming out of there. They're educators. And, going back to what Gerry said before, in terms of having a team that you're recruiting players that buy in, and like he said, use the word, people talk about team culture, use the word culture. There's something to be said to reach a goal, to be that first team from Harvard that's going to win a national championship. and that's something to aspire to. While you're there doing that, and also having to maintain your average and having your studies and all of that going on. It's not easy,
No,
and you got to give those kids a lot of credit for putting that kind of time into it, because lacrosse is definitely a lot different than when I was in college, or even Gerry was in college, and Steven. You talk about the late '70s into the '80s. I'll be honest, we didn't even lift. We didn't, we. I say it this way sometimes. I go, we were like glorified summer league. We just practiced every day. We had 2 hours of practice, and then we played games. These kids today, the time they have to put into it, just start with the training aspect of it. Then you got film. Then you have scouting reports, and it's so much more of a commitment. And the fact that then they have that, to have their academic side, which is what they're really going for in the long run. If you're going to Harvard, you're going there for the academics. Lacrosse is all well and good, but in the long run, you're there for a purpose, for your future. And for them to still compete at that high level is pretty amazing.
No, listen, this place is about excellence. I was telling Steve last night, Harvard athletes won 13 medals at the Olympics, which was more than like 90% of the countries.
what, crewing? How'd they win it?
No, they won it in track. They won it in crew. They won it in fencing.
13 medals?
In rugby. What's that?
13 medals in the
13
Olympics?
medals. So
That's unbelievable.
One track athlete won 3 gold medals. So this place is about excellence and unapologetic about it. And so, I'm going to disagree with you. Our guys who are coming here, they want everything. They're pursuing all of those things simultaneously at the same level. They're not giving up one thing for another. And you're right, it is hard. And I think one of the things that high school and club coaches need to do a better job of is explaining that when you're an athlete at this level, at this place, or any of the places in our league in particular, like you have to give up some stuff. And that's that sacrifice, you can look at it as a sacrifice.
Hey, Gerry, I'm sorry. What are you talking about? Give up what?
You have to give up a Saturday night. You have to give up, sleeping in. You have to give up, so you can look at it as a sacrifice, or you can look at it as an investment.
I got you.
I choose to look at it as an investment.
So most of the kids are giving up something to play a sport as well as keep their studies high, everything up there.
Correct. And that's, everybody's doing that on some level. But to be successful at a place like this, your time management skills are elite. And it doesn't mean you're not having a good time. Boston's a great city. We're right now.
Have a good time, whatever you're doing.
I'm 3 miles from the Garden. Harvard's right on a river. We have access to the ocean. So our guys have plenty of fun. They have plenty of a good time, but they have when you're an athlete in college, you have a different life than everybody else because of the weight room, because of the film room, because of how you track. We use technology that tracks sleep and nutrition.
What?
And so, we're looking to get a little bit better every day.
Vinny, could you have made it at Harvard, Vinny? Vinny, could you really have made it? Come on. I don't think so, Vinny. You like your milk. You like chocolate milk at night. Oh, forget it.
I would say he could.
I like to think I could make it anyway.
Too selfish. Vinny's too selfish. All about
himself. For my brother. I'm telling you, he could. Because just how I know how he is with Chaminade, it's almost as though the bigger the challenge, the more focused he would have been.
I disagree. He never studied. He was a last-minute Harry. He's a last-minute Harry.
Yeah, but he would have known in that swimming pool.
You say he would have changed? Maybe he would have
known. It's all about what challenges you. And that's the difficulties of choosing and finding the right place for what fits for you. I would ask Gerry. That's obviously one of the things that we talk about sometimes, and it is a hot topic all over the internet. Is the whole recruiting process and kids playing club and I'm on this team, I'm on that team, running around the country playing a million tournaments and doing all of these things, and how important is it really? You know, is it obvious? Is it, as far as the being seen part of it?
Right.
How
No,
would
Yeah,
you
you're right.
assess?
You're right.
How would you
the
assess that?
no I I do a lot of the recruiting presentations at these events, and I've had two children who've gone through this process, and I think if they cut a third of the number of games they played in the summer, they'd be healthier. They'd love the game more, and it would teach them how to recover. When you're playing 5 games in 2 days,
It's
you know,
crazy. The
it's
club
it's
So
sports are killing kids. Come
they,
on.
they load the calendar up because
no
again,
doubt,
it's obviously there's a profit motive for the people who
no
play
doubt.
It's
tournaments
all
and things like
profit.
that. But it's based on the parents and the teams wanting to be seen. I got to be seen more. I
Yeah,
got to be seen more. So it's like just keep cramming tournaments and games in because they have to be seen. I guess the thing is it that important or
no,
is
it's
there
it's
enough?
not it's not that important, but it's also we meaning the college coaches, we have to we have if we don't like that, we have to stop going
Yeah,
Good
because
point.
there's a
that's how
there,
it could
there, there
change.
so I started doing that this summer, but also we need to control the NCAA calendar a little bit differently, which if you limit the number of days that we can be out recruiting, that'll decrease the number of events. And so, listen, I think there's some really good club teams and some really good high school coaches and stuff like that, but there is no argument to be playing 30 to 40 to 50 lacrosse
You're
games
killing the
in
kid's
a summer.
career. It's
So
crazy.
it's
Overdoing it every day. It's overdoing every day, every day.
Well,
so
it's also hurt, high school. I mean, I would think that the club, from this perspective, club sort of suits the college coaches' schedules a little better because, the high school season runs concurrently to the college season. So they don't have as much of a chance, I would imagine, to be seeing kids playing in their high school games.
right.
Whereas when the seasons are over and they can go see some kids, that makes it more convenient for the college guys. Um, but it
But
really
convenience shouldn't be at the price of like the volume of hips and hammy and back and shoulder and wrist if you're a face-off guy. Those 5 areas, like we've had a kid show up here every year and fail a physical for 4 straight years,
Wow.
and that like and we're not allowed to collect like in the NFL, like when they do a physical on somebody who they're going to draft, they know everything every boo boo that guy's ever had. We're kind of in the dark, and we're not always getting transparent information from because they don't want to lose their spot at a school, so they're not going to tell oh yeah, I tore my ACL 3 times, and so there's a lot of things that aren't serving the health and well-being of the kids. But so one of the things we have to start doing is stop going to events for 3 days, and
Yeah, but Jerry, don't you
because I
get paid? Don't you get paid to do it?
not necessarily
Oh, you don't. I'm sorry. I was under the
not
impression that.
not some events have stipends, not all of them. Probably more don't than do.
Oh wow, I'm under the impression you got paid. I'm sorry, I didn't know that.
so like what I feel like what I find most disappointing with that whole thing is like if I think back and you say Levittown Levittown versus Manhasset, and coaches want to come out and see, oh, we want to see what happens Levittown and Manhasset because they, these guys are going to battle and it's such a big game. And like Smalley says,
I hated Manhasset.
a guy comes off
Oh, I
the
hated
train
them.
with his newspaper in his suit.
They get off the train with the newspaper. My
What'd you
father
say?
had Lucky Strikes rolled up in his
And
fucking
Lucky
sleeve.
Strike
Go to a game. I couldn't
and
stand
yodels.
that.
And what'd you say? He was eating yodels?
Oh, I was eating
He
like
was eating
sugar
yodels.
water and salt cakes, man.
But,
You fucking got. Oh, I hated Manhasset. I never
but
liked.
now, but now it seems as though, let's imagine you have that stud player on Levittown, right? He's a stud, right? But the team's maybe not that good, right? They've been down. It's almost to a point where that parent might decide, you know what? My son's on this elite club team. He ain't even going to play high school. I'm
Right.
not now you don't even have like high school just doesn't even seem like it's relevant in any of the process.
And then that's happening in hockey like hockey. If you're a big time hockey guy, you don't play for your high
I mean,
school team. You play
that's
for
where
your
Correct.
it's
Like
travel
headed.
team.
soccer, you're right, Jerry.
I
It's
think
getting
it's
like that.
I think
But
lacrosse is heading that way, and it's to me. I'm like, I hate that. Like to me, there was nothing more special than watching those premier games. Even during the season, and then obviously when it starts to culminate towards the state tournaments and things like that.
Less
And
is better now. Less is better for a career in college and pros. Less is better.
right, right, it's tough. I mean, that's a tough thing because these kids and then they
yeah, and you're in the middle of it with your son
right,
now, and I would just tell you, like, when I was living in South Bend and my kids were getting into it, we would pick a couple events this summer because my philosophy was I wanted them hunting me down to play in that fourth event. I wanted them like begging,
right,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
Versus, you put you just got back on Thursday and you're leaving for something on
right,
Saturday. Your body, like we spend a lot of time and money on recovery tools for our guys, whether it's Theragun or ice baths or Normatec or all these different devices that you can buy, and we have to educate them on how to do it because these are guys who played 40 games in most of their freshman, sophomore, and junior summer. So they don't know how to recover. And the other thing that happens is you're not that excited when you win, and you're not that disappointed when you
I
lose.
agree with that. I think
And,
it takes a competitive edge off of guys. I
no
definitely.
doubt. And then you're not in your car if you're wired a certain way, whether it's you talking to your sibling or talking to your father or your mother, or just processing what just happened in your brain, where you now have to go back and figure out, oh, I got to work on my left on the run. I got to. So all these things that are connected to, like the night before a test, that night's sleep is so critical for you to retain knowledge. That's why staying up all night or doing an all-nighter is the worst thing you can do to do an exam. Same thing is true for an athlete. You need to learn how to recover. You need to learn how to rest. You need to process what happened in that game. You need to develop your own plan on how to get better. And you can't do that when you're constantly going, I played today at 11, 1, 3, and 5. And then I'm going to go back to the hotel. You
So
know what
what
I mean?
time
Like,
should you be in bed? What time should you go to sleep for that? I mean,
well, we grew up, it's 10
David,
o'clock. Do you know where your children are?
right.
Right.
well, I'm saying at Harvard, you want somebody in bed by 9 o'clock would be a late.
I don't track if I have to worry about what they're doing, they're away from me. I have the wrong guys. I don't
Maybe
worry about what
someday
they're
they're
doing.
going to have a little lever and chip in your ear, and they're going to know everything about you, the way the future's going. Do this at this time, eat this at this time. You'll be able to perform at this way. It's getting more scientific like that.
No
These
doubt.
athletes,
No
the
doubt.
Olympics are doing stuff like
Well,
that. But
one of the things that I would say, and I genuinely say this about Gerry, and there's probably only maybe a handful that I would say that I fully know, is one of the things about, I think, people when they are looking at schools and things and whatever reasons, but I always think is like, do you trust a guy with my kid kind of thing? And Gerry is a guy that his heart is with those kids, and I have no doubt Harvard's going to be doing some great things because he's looking out for his team, he's looking out for his kids, he's in a great place, and he's got it right. He's got the importance of it right. They want to do the both things simultaneously. They want to have success on the field, but they more importantly, they're going to have success in life, and he's mentoring that. I don't think there's a more noble thing that that someone can do for someone else like that in coaching. And I know it's your profession, but you're like a fish in water with it, Gerry. I always knew I could see the success just starting from your days at Notre Dame and even as a teammate. Tremendous. I'm looking forward to some great things coming from Harvard for sure.
Awesome. Well, appreciate it. And it was great
Well,
chatting with you
yeah,
guys.
you're not going yet though, because I got a
Okay.
story for Smalley. This is a story he probably doesn't know.
Guys, I didn't go the conventional way, but I made it
All right.
big.
You did.
Come on, guys.
Now I bet you never
I've
knew
given
this
more
story.
money. I've given more money to lacrosse in 3 years than anybody, Vinny. Not to bring my name up. Have I not, Vincent?
Not to bring your name up, though.
So
Yeah.
Smalls, I bet
Yeah.
you never knew this. Gerry was, to some extent, integrally involved in when I met Misty, my wife.
What?
Yes, and it was out in Vale. Gerry was playing with the Rusty Red. I was playing with the Rusty. I was actually playing with the Long Island guys. And Gerry tells Gerry tells the story where he says they were all, some of the Rusty Red guys, Misty and her friend, they asked them, come and have a drink with us. And there was, maybe 8 or 9 guys around one of these big tables where Misty and her friend were. And Gerry says that I came in because I was coming in from New York, came into the place. He says, I started boxing guys out like Karl Malone. Remember that, Gerry?
You got badass elbows, though, too, I'll tell you.
The guy was laser locked. It was like they were like the only 2 people in the room. It was like Vinny at Uncle Sam's in the late 70s.
Vinny, what do you got for Gerry, man? Give him something. Give us a couple
So
of
I
Vinnies.
think Steve, where we had what the hell was the name of that the bar, right?
Red Lion?
Red Lion.
Red Lion. The Red
Yeah.
Lion.
God.
We started calling it the Rusty Red Lion.
Yeah, that was, those were the days, I mean, look, I always said about Rusty Red, and that's what I think it was up in Ontario when we went up and played in the Masters at the World Games. And I said, for all the things of Rusty Red, I got to say, the one, delivered me my beautiful bride. I mean, in the end of the day, if it wasn't for Rusty Red, I would not have met my wife. And
Congratulations, man.
A lot of people talk about the 10-man ride.
Right.
Steven had the 1-man ride. Yes.
Woo!
It closed out. There was nothing else going on. It was like Lady in Red. It was like the music was playing. It was
no doubt.
Hey, Gerry, I want to give a shout out to your wife. I just one quick thing. I know we're moving quick here and we're going to wrap it up, but I want to give a shout out to your wife because last year she was able to come to the suite and I got a chance to jolly with her and talk a little shtick or whatever. She says, I bust on Gerry all the time. I found her to be very engaging, of course, very wonderful person and everything. And I just want to, what was her name again? I did forget it.
Tracy.
What a nice, just a really down-to-earth, humble human being. And I wanted to credit you that. You got what I call the GOAT. If she's still
all I
waiting,
can remember from that visit was the governor of Delaware busting my chops about my season.
That's right.
I'm like, you're not getting my vote.
That's why I didn't invite him up there last year. Oh,
that guy almost got thrown out of the suite almost just tossed him out of the suite.
So are we ready for our shout outs? We'll wrap up with our shout outs.
Yeah. Tell Gerry what we do. Gerry, we usually give a shout out. Also, you're going to do it, and you'll go last because you'll take somebody anybody to do with lacrosse that did something or whatever. Just a nice shout out because we got a lot of listeners. And stuff.
You want me to go first? I'll go first.
Go first, yeah.
I'll go first. My shout out this week has got to go to a good friend of the show, was a guest of the show. He had a little bit of a medical issue last week. I heard he's going to recover well. Matt Schomburg, our man Shami.
Shami, heal up, Shami.
He's on the mend. He's I saw a message where he's doing well and he'll be back. So well wishes to Shami. Get better soon. As a little side secondary note, because I said I would. I know I mentioned them before. Mikey Cummings, he's out there.
Mikey Cummings.
I love him.
Out there listening.
He follows. It's great. And again, another guy part of that Rusty Red crew.
I need to see his birth certificate. He claims Levittown status and maybe more Wantagh. I need just because you drove down Hempstead Turnpike doesn't mean you're from Levittown.
Newbridge Road.
Newbridge Road.
Vinny, what do you
All
got,
right.
Vinny? You're second, Vinny, today.
I'll give a shout out since Jerry's on with us today. I'm going to give a shout out to the Creaky Crimson, the team that Stephen played for with the Harvard guys, led by Mickey Cavoti, a good friend, and their ultimate championship up in Lake Placid. They pulled it off.
I heard, and this is what I've heard. I've heard that they want to go for a repeat, and I heard they're gonna maybe get Coach Wojcik out there on the
Wow.
field.
Go.
That's what
Go.
I've heard.
Let's go. I might have to come out of retirement.
Yeah.
Oh,
Need you, Jerry.
Oh, man. You can
What
do
do
it.
you got, Smalls?
I want to
What's
give a
that?
shout out to a dear friend of mine, Jeff Dumpson, who was gracious enough when I was trying out for Nassau, and I was able to make the team. And we were down in Maryland, and Jeff, it was the going into the fourth quarter. Anna Randall tied us 9-9. I said, Jeff, what do you got? He goes, Smalls, this is like chicken soup. We're going to win this thing. And we shut him out 14-9. And he held the ball for over 2 minutes of the game, running up and down. And we won the national championship. It was a great gift of my life. And I owe everything to Jeff, and he's just a great person and stuff. So I want to give him the shout out, right, Vin? That's all right, right?
nice,
Jeff.
nice.
He wound up playing for the Redskins on the taxi squad. He was some athlete, man.
Yeah.
Really.
I think you guys should dedicate one episode of this to the Smalley years at Nassau.
Yeah. No,
He
that's
might be the first guy that took 4 years to get out of a 2-year school.
We're going to need Coach Speckman on that one. We're going
Right.
to need Dougie
Hall.
Hall.
Wait, can I
We're gonna
jump
need-
on Jerry? It was Jerry's day, but let me jump on Jerry. I'm the only guy here. And unfortunately, it's the knock on Vinny. I'm going to pick on Vinny. The only knock on Vinny, he never won in college. So that's the only knock on Vincenzo.
Everybody on the Nassau team that won a national championship got a Camaro instead of a So my shout out,
Go ahead.
my shout out is I referenced it earlier is, for the people who are listening, this organization called Team Impact does God's work, man. They're taking sports teams all over the country and finding kids who have illnesses or challenges, and they get those young guys and gals get signed by that team, and they become connected to that team. They come to practices and games.
Oh, it's awesome.
Did
and
that
all the
originally start with the Northwestern women's team?
I don't know. It's based in Boston here.
I remember seeing that somewhere where
Could be, but it's a Team Impact. It's based in Boston, and it's just doing unbelievable things, kind of one family at a time.
Awesome.
So you have a family connected right now to the Harvard men's team?
Our guy just kind of graduated. He got too old, but there's 6 or 7 other teams that have kids here at Harvard, and so but I'm involved in their organization.
You know who Vinny's guy was? You know him very well, Peter Cohn, for the U.S. team.
That's right.
Yeah, well, I didn't bring him in.
But there was not a more beloved figure in lacrosse than Peter Cohn.
Oh,
No
man.
doubt.
Pete's the legend.
Yeah, it was when you were trying out for the national team. You guys remember, like, he would walk around and knock on the door, and it's 8:00, time to represent your country. The problem was it was 8:00 for about an hour and a half.
Right.
Well, Jerry, God bless you, man. I love you, man. Everything you're doing, you're the GOAT of Levittown. I got to give you the title. You are the GOAT.
No,
You've done everything you can do. We want to go to a game. Vinny, what game we going up to Harvard? I never stepped. Imagine me stepping in Harvard. Vinny,
You
I
got
want
us
to step
going
on it.
everywhere. You got us going.
I went to Duke. I went to Yale. I went everywhere. Can I step on Harvard, Vinny?
Jerry, he's severe. He suffers severely from FOMO, fear of missing out. Smalley. He wants to be in 9 places at once.
you guys need to do a live remote podcast before one of our games.
That would be
We
great.
could do that.
That would be great.
We could do that. We
Yeah.
definitely could do that.
Yeah.
I'll whatever I can do to help make it happen.
Jerry,
I'm
do you have
willing to
sweets?
invest. I'm willing to invest in that.
Oh. Gerry, in your new park, you said you got a new field that people bought there for the Harvard people.
No, we're going to be announcing it shortly.
Oh, it's not done yet.
No.
Are you going to put suites in like Hofstra? Because my thing is, Hofstra, believe it or not, has the best suites in the country because we have them low and you can watch the game.
I just want to see Vinny in his Hofstra blazer again, if that would be possible. You and Jim Metzger side by side.
There you go. I give a shout out to, I played against one of the great Harvard alums, Peter Predon. What a player that guy was, Bernsey. Yeah. I'm sure you heard of him.
No, I did. No, he was like a 3 or 4 time.
Yeah, he was a phenomenal player. You know, and he was at a time when Harvard was, I don't want to say a little down, but you know, they didn't have the personnel, but he could have played anywhere. He was phenomenal.
Well, thank you, Gerry.
Thanks for taking time, Gerry. Appreciate
Another great episode. The fans love it.
We'll be back.
We'll give you a little bit of music signing off.